Moving, is that it?
I was just going to say to include it in our e-news as well whenever that information comes up
Yeah.
is one way to reach people.
Okay. Moving on down to 8.2, North Hollis Parking Management Plan Progress Report. Is this,
Mayor Brinkman, before you is a report on the progress of the implementation of the North Hollis Street Parking Management Plan. If you recall, the management plan actually calls for paid parking in the North Hollis area in the areas listed in the report. Council had taken an action to phase this in with initial of green zones, 2-hour parking green zones in the areas instead of parking meters, mainly because of the cost of the parking meters themselves or the paid parking areas. The green zones have been put in. They are all in. The police department has gone to a 30-day notification of the ticketing, and coming out of it, we have received some feedback from the residents and businesses in the area, mainly around the green zones on 65th Street east of Hollis. One of the things that we have found is that there's nothing in our municipal code that sets a time on a green zone or any of the zones. So they're 24/7. Now, council in the past has taken action on certain zones that they're only operational or enforceable during certain hours. For example, the white zones in front of Annie Yates School are only enforceable during the morning drop-off and the afternoon pickup, and that in between parking is allowed there. And we've done that with several zones throughout the city, but we have not done that with these zones. That could be one of the solutions for the 65th Street area, in that east of and actually west of Hollis, where the zones are in, that the zones are only operational during daytime hours or certain hours, and at nighttime they can be parked there as residents parking their cars that they don't have parking for in the residential complexes up there. But as that comes out, the additional cost of putting signs on those areas would enter into it, so that a motorist pulling into it would understand that after a certain hour they can park there without threat of a ticket. Without those signs, and if we only put it on a curb, what the hours of operation are, I don't think the motorists would see it, number one, but at nighttime they wouldn't see it at all. So if there is a choice to look at the zones and have them as a time zone, then my recommendation, and I think it would be different for Maurice, is that signs would be necessary. If they operate 24/7, I think the 2-hour zone, just the 2 hours on the curb is fine. But other than those issues, we are coming to the end of our 30-day period. We will be enforcing it out there. I do have limited staff to do it, to do the enforcement. Given the number of zones, it's very labor intensive. I would not recommend that we use a sworn police officer to go up and down marking zones at every 2 hours and trying to enforce the zones. So, but an additional PST could be considered. In actuality, the fines from the citations, which are about $45 a citation, would more than pay for the PSTs, the cost of the PST. There is also a recommendation from the Bicycle Committee for various other things, that we review the fine schedule that we have. It's probably been 6 years that we've, or more since we've reviewed and looked at our fines and upped them. And so I've directed my staff to contact the surrounding cities around us to see what their fines are for metered parking and or zone parking. So,
Jennifer?
Can I don't think the council ever intended that the green zones would be 24/7. At least that wasn't my understanding, that we would have police enforcing 2-hour parking in green zones around the clock.
Business hours.
It's usually business hours, but without the signage, yeah, I mean, it feels like we should have considered this earlier, but here we are. By the way, some clever person changed one of the 2-hour signs on the curb on Doyle Street to say 12 hours. I thought that was clever. Maybe it's on the south end of the east side of Doyle Street, just north of Powell, between Powell and 59th. Maybe
we'll get
Public
all our
Works
crack
wants to work at that.
investigators on to find out who's vandalizing city property.
So I want to put something forward for the council to think about with all of this and the enforcement. You know, we tried the first solution, which was just paint, which was the low-cost, low-stakes solution to try and ease short-term parking. But I think what we're seeing here is a bigger problem regarding the enforcement and also the clarity of the hours that it's enforceable without signage. So I would like us to think about, as I know that it's still in the future, but looking at our SIP monies, to think about moving forward as soon as possible with paid parking. And the reason for that is that I don't think we want to be giving out a lot of fines for short-term parking. I don't think that, at least that wasn't my intention, and even if it would pay for the enforcement, what we really would like to do, based on the parking plan as it was studied, is to allow people to park as long as they want, as long as they're paying for it. And there's the price signal that the longer you park, the rates go up even. I saw that in Santa Cruz when I was there recently. You know, the first hour or two are a certain price, and then the third hour is more, and the fourth hour is more and more than that. It's a certain capital cost to put in the paid parking, but as I recall, within 2 years, the revenues would pay for that capital cost. And to me, it would keep us from having to give out fines. It would be only fined if someone wasn't paying for the parking. It's not a time limitation. And we want people to stay in Emeryville as long as they want to stay, as long as they have a parking place or they're paid for their parking place. You can call in with your phone and extend the time on your parking meter. This is the new technology that makes it easier for people. I think fines, even if it's $45, and I don't recommend moving that up actually at this time, but I think that sends the wrong signal. So I just want us to consider that, that the enforcement and the hours, I think, and the signage could be quite expensive, and looking at the paid parking as an alternative if we're going to look at expenses.
I think that makes sense. Well, how much would signage be?
Yeah. Maurice, do you have any idea?
We actually haven't gone out to figure out how many signs and where. I mean, we have green zones throughout the city that probably are impacted in the same way. We need to do a real thorough inventory of what we have.
Well, I guess I understand what you're saying, Jennifer. I thought this was going to be kind of like a phased.
I know. Well, I thought it'd be easy, but it's
But
not.
I thought the phase is going to be first paint, second put up some signs, third the enforcement, fourth was to see how it worked and if we had the money to put paid parking in. So I think
Well, do we consider the paid parking part of the capital improvement plan?
Yes.
Even though supposedly after 2 years it will pay for itself, this is not citywide, one would hope.
Right. No.
You know, we're only really talking about the green lanes, the green areas that we've already designated. And that's, you know, in the overall scheme of things, it's not clear to me whether or not that small trial installation would indeed pay for itself. But certainly it's something that we should consider at the capital improvement program later in the summer. I assume we're going to be doing this later in the summer. But in the interim, I think you're right, Kurt. The whole idea was that this was
Yeah.
to be incremental,
It was,
easing into it.
Yeah.
The camel's nose in the tent, and then the camel's in the tent,
that's right.
kind of thing.
But I didn't think we thought we were going to have to pay for signs everywhere to enforce
I
it. That's a
think the-
wrinkle that I
The
didn't.
signage cost is
No, I don't
not
think that's a big deal.
It's
extensive.
nominal
Come on.
compared to parking meters,
Okay.
for sure.
I mean,
Well, that's
give me a
great.
break.
Great.
No, I think
So
we,
come back to us with those costs.
so I would suggest, or I would make the motion, we put the signage in, and the signage would be, parking be limited between the hours of 8 and 5 during the normal work week.
So are we talking about just in those new green zones that we established? Just concentrating on the signs in
I
that
would-
area for this time?
Yeah,
Okay.
Well,
let's,
wherever it needs to be enforced, we need to have signs,
Right.
is my understanding. And it's, no?
Only if we're going to put hours of operation on the zone. I mean, there's a zone on Paladue Street south of Powell that really isn't parked in the evening hours or on the weekends because the businesses, there's no residents in that area.
well, let's,
But on 65th Street, where we have considerable residential neighborhoods, they don't know that they can park there overnight. So
So you think it might be somewhat limited how much signage we need?
yes.
Okay, that's great. I thought this was like a everywhere, we can't do anything without signage. Okay. Yeah, I'm for that. But I'd like to come back with how much it's going to cost before we
well,
make
that's
that
what I was going to say.
I can report back at a Public Works Committee meeting if that works.
That
Or-
would work out well. Okay.
Okay.
2 days from today. Good on you, Maurice.
Well, actually,
We have
Thursday,
the transportation next Tuesday.
we're not going
Oh, and Transportation Committee, yeah.
we're not going to be there on Thursday because we have the
You have A-Bag.
A-bag.
Well,
meeting.
you're not going to be there, but I'm going to Public Works first. Emeryville
Oh,
first,
you're-
then A-Bag.
Okay.
What could I say?
Okay, we'll see you.
I have
we'll see you
one
coming
other
back.
question for Chief James. With the vehicle license plate recognition camera that we got, is there any way that makes the enforcement of this easier, or does it not easier?
Not the license plate readers per se, but there is technology out there that I would recommend we look at when we do go to the paid parking schemes that will actually give us notification when somebody is overparked and hasn't paid additional for the parking, which instead of the labor-intensive going out, marking each tire, and 2 hours later coming and looking at it, the technology is there to alert the parking enforcement people that this vehicle's in violation.
So that was tried, Jennifer, at the public market on a trial basis where a sensor is placed in the parking spot. And it can tell you when the car is sitting over it and when it isn't, and when it moves and stuff like that. That particular company went out of business. But I think that's the kind
There
of
are
thing
other
you're thinking of.
companies that.
But now Park Mobile, like they use in Oakland, it's user-oriented. So you go ahead and put in your time, right? And when you're started to take up the space and how much time you want. And then if your time elapses, right, then I imagine there's a way of notifying people that in this zone, the time for this license plate number has elapsed.
Big Brother comes to
It
Emeryville.
What? Yep, that's true.
Santa Monica, when the car leaves the parking meter spot and there's time left on their meter, the meter goes back to 0.
Oh.
So that the next person can't drive in and get
Oh,
that
no
little extra 20
generosity
minutes.
at
Can you believe
Nothing.
that? Crazy.
Moving along.
Okay, move along. Enough about parking.
No.
Oh, we have 4 more items.
I move all the items in 8.8.
Is there a second to all the items?
Second.
Okay. Consensus here? Yes, yes? Yes,
Yes.
okay, 5-0.